Okay, welcome everyone. This is Jonathan Lipp, the director of the Big Apple Film Festival, and I want to thank you all for being here. So this is our second day of our distribution summit, and this conference we're about to have now is called Distributing Film for African American Audiences. And we have with us our guest, Jeff Clanagan, who is the CEO of LOL Entertainment, which is the production company of comedian Kevin Hart, as well as the CEO and founder of Codeblack Films. So Jeff, are you able to, yeah, there you go. Hey, hello there. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. All right. So at this point, we are going to turn it over to our event coordinator, Ann Nur. Hello, Ann. How are you this morning?
Hi, good. Thanks. Good to be here.
Okay. And this conference is going to last approximately 45 minutes. And if any of our participants have any questions for Jeff, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box or into the chat box. And Ann will get to as many questions as she can. So thank you very much. And we'll see you again in about 45 minutes.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Good to see you today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. If you could tell us, before we get started with questions and things like that, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you started out in the industry?
My background, I started out actually in home entertainment on the distribution side. I was actually the first person to actually do straight to video movies before the studios were doing it. So I released the first video movies. I was running a rapper named Master P, his company No Limit Films, and we released the first straight to videos movies. We pioneered it in, I'm gonna say 1998, 97, 98. And at the time, the studios were still just putting movies in the Blockbuster in the Hollywood video for rental. And so we kind of broke the sell-through model by going directly to the record stores and selling movies directly. So my background is distribution.
Okay, great. How do you see the future of like films and stuff like that for this type of market and going forward?
I mean, the future and the present, which are one and the same, is that streaming. I mean, everything's about streaming now. So the whole business model has been turned upside down, but everything is really in terms of consumers, how the consumer content is through streamers.
Right. Okay. What should producers consider when determining what distributor to sign with?
Well, I mean, I think the thing about it is the concept of a distributor may not even be applicable anymore because, just 5 or 6 years ago, you would go to either an independent distributor or you go to studio to get your film distributed. Now, the reality now is that the theatrical model is been turned upside down and is continuing to change. So, when you're looking at the model right now, and that may change, but when you're looking at the model right now, it's either a big Disney movie or a horror movie, which is going to do business in the box office. So it's very challenging right now to get a movie, and that's a lot of that, is obviously due to the pandemic, is to get a movie, especially an independent movie, released theatrically. So if you weren't, traditionally, if you were not going the theatrical route, you still go to a distributor because you would need, at the very least, home video distribution and ancillary like TV and things like that, DVD. But now that DVD is not even really a factor, a lot of independent filmmakers are going straight to streamers directly. So you can go sell on Netflix, or you can go to one of the new AVOD streamers like a Roku or Pluto, places like that. So the model is continuing to change in terms of exploitation of film. But I don't know that you would even need a distributor because you can reach out to a lot of these places directly.
On that note, how do you see the theatrical side going forward? I mean, the film festivals and things like that, is there still a place there, or are people more willing to go just to streaming and stuff? Or how's that? How do you feel that works?
Well, I mean, you kind of have to go to streaming. I mean, that's where the model is. I mean, if I was an independent, making an independent film, I wouldn't be concerned with about chasing a theatrical release, because it's very difficult in these times to get a theatrical release, just because the economics that, you know, in the theaters that go along with that. So I would be looking for a big, you know, I would go the film festival route, and you're gonna like what you'll see it this year. Some of the bigger festivals like Sundance, stuff like that. You'll see big acquisitions, but it may be the streamers up there making the acquisitions versus the studios, which is, you know, what you've seen in the past. But also you have to remember, are the studios now have their own streaming platforms, so they may, you know, you still can get a studio come in, like Lionsgate could come in and acquire a film, but remember they own Stars, so it may go theatrical, it may go straight to Stars. You know, Disney has their platform, Paramount has their platform, so it's going to be very interesting going forward in terms of how studios approach acquisitions of independent films.
Right, interesting. We do have one question I want to ask from our audience. How do you suggest getting a sales agent?
You just basically you just have to do the research, but you can just reach out. If you reach, here's what I would say is a good thing is that with all the new streaming platforms popping up, there's not enough content out there, and especially not enough original content. So from a filmmaker standpoint, if you have a film, trust me, there's a lot of sales agents that are out there and they're hungry, because it's a seller's market, because you have a lot of buyers, because there's still, you know, these big streamers have to feed that machine. So they're looking for content, especially they're looking for original content, because they're trying to differentiate themselves from each other. So if you have a film, you're in a good position because there are buyers out there.
So how do filmmakers determine what is the best distributor model for their film?
I mean, you know, obviously, if you're an independent filmmaker, the assumption is you finance the film independently, either with your own money or you put together investors. So you have to look at the business of it also, and can't just be on the, you know, it can't just be about the art, about, hey, I want to get my film on a screen. But you have to either recoup your money, or you have to figure out the best way to recoup your investors' money. So obviously going out to different distributors and see where you can get the best financial model now, you know, and there's different models out there. Some streamers will just give you a lot of money up front and buy your film. Some streamers will, you know, license it for a window, or maybe they do a year or 2 year window, then you can still license it to other streamers. So you really have to look at the economics of the kind of offers that you get for your film.
Right. I understand. We have another question. Is it better to stream your project straight from your website on your own, or try to get your project into a Tubi platform? And they're saying on your own.
So if you're going to build your own website and stream it on your own, then you have to understand marketing, because you have to drive people to your website. Now, if you have a huge social media presence, and you have a way to drive traffic, and then if you drive traffic, then how are you going to monetize that? Then you have to understand how to feed advertising in, or get an advertiser, or you can go a transaction model where you put it on your website and you can stream it for $1.99. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to drive traffic. Now, if you have a way to drive traffic and you got social media or a marketing strategy to do it, then there's nothing wrong with that. But you can still do that and actually still go license it to a Tubi or somebody like that. And I mean, Tubi's very, very aggressive in terms of licensing films. So there's not necessarily one way or the other, because what you do is it's called windowing. You may put it on your website for 6 months, promote it, then you can still go license the Tubi after that. Then you can bring it back and still put it on your website. So it's not exclusive.
Right. Okay. From John Plaschow, I wrote a controversial book titled The FBI War on Tupac Shakur, also covering the targeting of Black leaders from the 60s to the 90s. Do you think I could ever have the chance of landing my mainstream distribution sites with a film based on the book with such a controversial subject? That's a lot, but.
I mean, I released the Tupac biopic. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know that that's at least for me. I don't know if that's so controversial. I mean, there's a lot of information out there about COINTELPRO. If you look at the movie Black Messiah. So there's a lot of documentation on how they just getting away from film, but there's a lot of documentation out there on how the FBI was targeting Black organizations in the 60s and 70s. So that's a fact. So that's not really controversial. And we've seen it in a number of films. So from that standpoint, I don't necessarily think that's so controversial. Now, question is, do you think you could ever achieve any mainstream distribution sites with a film based on the book? If the film is great, I mean, you just have to figure out, you have to find that story. People are always looking for good stories, and especially when you're talking about the government and covert operation like this, it really boils down to what's the story, what's the movie. But it's not so controversial that nobody's going to pick it up.
Right. From Arlette Thomas, how do you determine what distributor is best for your film?
I mean, you have to look at, so for example, if we're talking about a certain genre film or kind of niche film, you have to look at the distributors and see what they're best at. So for example, if you have Spanish speaking film where you're going to go to a Spanish speaking, that specializes in Spanish films. If you have a horror film, you might look at a distributor that specializes in horror films. So I think you have to determine your distributor based on the type of film, and you have to do a lot of it, you have to do a lot of research and figure out, who's best at doing what kind of film. But if you have very specific kind of genre film or niche films, you have to look at the distributors and see what they're good at.
Right. From Rico, what advice do you have for getting the most out of a web series?
Is you have to build an audience around your web series. I mean, because there are, series that have broken out and got picked up by television, but at the end of the day, it's about an audience. So when we talk about the web, I don't like to use the word web anymore because it's a little bit antiquated. So when I think about, it's more of a digital series. Where you're probably going to find the best audiences at is on YouTube. Now, is YouTube on the web? Well, yeah, it's on the web, but it still is a social media platform. So it's the thing about it is that you want to go to where the audiences are at. So if you build a standalone website, you have to bring an audience to your website. So you have to understand and figure out how to bring the audience to your website. If I go to YouTube, there's an audience already there. If I go to Facebook, there's an audience already there, but you then have to figure out how to drive that existing audience from that platform to your content. And that's a lot easier than just building a standalone website, because you have to think about people, consumers, when they go onto let's call it the web. It's not really the web. They're going on to social media. The first thing people do when they open up their phones or computers is they're going to check their Instagram, their Facebook, or they're going to YouTube. They're going directly to these social media platforms, and that's where the audiences are at. So if you're doing a digital series, let's not call it a web series, call it a digital series, you want to be on these social media platforms, but then you have to just really learn and understand how to target audiences on these platforms.
Talking about that, I want to talk about the different streaming platforms. There's SVOD, AVOD. Can you explain the differences between those and what would be beneficial for one versus the other?
Yeah. So the thing about the streaming platforms, I call it the land of acronyms, because there's all these acronyms about these platforms: AVOD, SVOD, TVOD. It gets confusing, but the simple answer is this. SVOD means subscription video on demand. So subscription video on demand is nothing but a platform that you subscribe to. So Netflix, you pay a monthly fee. Disney Plus, you pay a monthly fee. Amazon Prime, you pay a monthly fee. That is an SVOD platform. An AVOD platform means advertising video on demand. That means it's basically free TV. So you go to a platform you could go to if you have connected TV device, like if you have a Roku device, or you could go to, this is where you get into acronyms, to Tubi, and the Plutos and the Zumos, or even Peacock, these are AVOD platforms. These are that you can go there and watch TV. You just have to watch ads. So the differences are subscription and AVOD, which is free, and that's really the difference in the platforms. The AVOD market is probably the fastest growing market. I mean, we're seeing tremendous growth in that space because it's basically just free TV.
Okay. From Ben, how do you navigate around the industry perspective that Black films don't sell? And he's kind of.
Do you mean internationally? Because there's no perspective to say Black films don't sell. Black films are thriving. Even like when you look at the streaming market that I just described, Black films are over-indexing on those platforms. So there's no perception around it that Black films don't sell, unless you meant to say the industry perspective that Black films don't sell internationally.
Well, he's also saying, is there a space for unique Black films, Black sci-fi, Black fantasy, Black psych thrillers, etc.?
There's a huge space for it. There's a need for it, and there's a desire for it. I mean, there's huge audiences out there, but yeah, I mean, sci-fi, thrillers, I mean, all that will work. And there's, you know, and distributors and streamers are looking for that kind of differentiated content.
Yeah. From Brown, what struggles did you have pushing a project straight to DVD at a time when it was unpopular?
Well, I think so that some of that's subjective. When you say it was unpopular to who? So when I started in the DVD business, it wasn't the thing for Hollywood. So when you say unpopular, so if you know, going to talent A-list artists, you know, they weren't necessarily ready doing a straight to DVD project. But in terms of the business was there. I mean, we blew open the business. Like I said, I was the first one doing this, and it was a huge business for years. So it was popular to the consumer. It may not have been the in thing, and I say in the A-list Hollywood circles for a while. It took them a while to adapt to it, but at the end of the day, it's still direct to consumer. So you're just delivering content to a consumer, but at that, you know, with DVD, it was just through an actual device. For me, there's no difference between distributing a DVD and distributing straight to streamer. I'm distributing content straight to the consumer now. But with streaming, that's kind of the end thing. So that's, you know, in terms of Hollywood, streaming is it. So it was never unpopular to the consumer because the concept that a consumer could go to Walmart, buy a movie, or Target, buy a movie, that was always a popular concept. And when we first did it, that's why the business was so successful. It was difficult to get A-list Hollywood talent to do a straight to DVD movie.
Right. We've got a few questions here. So from Lena, are there specific distributors you recommend for short films catering to African American audiences?
Well, there's not really a distribution model for short films because it's, you know, like you don't go to Netflix or Disney and see a short film. The best path for shorts are to really play the film festival circuit, like go to the film festivals and create an audience, and then put it on, you know, then put it online on a YouTube or Facebook, build a community around it. But there's not necessarily a business model for, like, if you just had one short film, your short film is really just a marketing tool for you as a filmmaker to potentially get that film picked up and then, you know, maybe adapt into a feature film movie.
Yeah, exactly. Sweeney, when contacting sales agents, is it best to keep it short and sweet, parentheses, trailer and synopsis, or give a lot of detail about your film, parentheses, festival awards, press, etc.?
Yeah, short and sweet is the best. And you don't want to make comparisons of the film. It's, you know, it's synopsis. If you played film festivals, you've been list of film festivals, and you know, synopsis, and it should be a paragraph. Synopsis, cast list, film festivals, and a trailer if you have it. But don't say, hey, I've got a soundtrack, or this is the next thing since Tyler Perry or Spike Lee. That's nobody, it doesn't resonate. Just be very direct and succinct about what your film is.
Right. From Roberta Jones, where would you go for distributing faith-based dramatic content featuring African Americans? Are you aware of executives seeking this as EPs? Parentheses S question mark.
Yeah, there is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but you can probably Google it. There's a couple of distributors that concentrate on faith-based content. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there are some distributors that actually their sole focus is faith-based content.
Right. Okay. From Kanja, does your company do MG deals? So what is your thoughts on MG deals in terms of minimum guarantee? So some investors want to see a distribution company will back the film with this deal. I have become a finalist at this festival for my screenplay and have been offered $1 million to make it neat. And have offered $1 million to make it, but need a distributor.
Okay, so let me explain to everybody what an MG is. Just a minimum guarantee. And that's say you go to a distributor and the distributor says, okay, I'm going to pick up the film and I'm going to give you $1 million minimum guarantee when you deliver the film. Now, the thing about that is, like where she says, I've been offered $1 million, is that there's a little bit of misconception about that offer, because if somebody's coming saying you, hey, I'll give you the minimum $1 million if you can get a distributor, they're basically saying they want you to get a distributor that's going to offer a guarantee and guarantee their money. So all they're really doing is advancing the money if the studio is going to guarantee the money. That's a hard deal to do. Most distributors are not going to do that with new filmmakers. And if somebody's going to put up an MG, they're going to want to see cast, they're going to know director, they want to know that, one, you can make and deliver the film, a quality film. So it's difficult to get that for a new filmmaker if you don't have a track record.
From Ricardo, I believe it's, what do you like to see in content, and are you looking for content at this time?
I'm always looking for content. I mean, you're looking for great content. What do I like to see in content? I mean, obviously, great storyline, cast, and then it's well produced. What could be film or TV series.
Okay. From Amy, I have a first cut of a feature documentary about dance hall music / culture in New York with a celebrity EP. The story has never been told, the story has never been told, but so for a couple of top agents and top tier festivals haven't been connected with it. How can we reach distributors or partners who will find this content valuable?
My advice for a documentary, especially there's something that's as specific as that, is film festivals. If you really work the film festivals, you'll find a distributor that's interested in that kind of content. But I would highly recommend film festivals, or I would look at also, a lot of things you got to do is there's a lot of this information you just have to do the research. So if you have a film, it's about dance hall or music culture, put a list. Now, and you're talking about basically from Europe, but put a list of similar type or comp type movies and look at the type of distributors that distribute that kind of content, and you'll find some similarities. You'll find probably 2 or 3 distributors that focus on, let's say, call it music documentaries, and that's how you kind of find your target. But I would still highly recommend you play film festivals.
We usually ask this at the end, but Arlette is asking, how do we contact you? What's the best way for people to contact you?
Just kind of go through you can go to the website. There's an email on there.
Okay.
And just send an email.
Okay. For Elena, do you think American audiences would be open to films from the Caribbean?
Yeah. Yes. It's not a huge market. It really depends on the film. I mean, it's going to be very, very film specific.
Okay. John's asking, well, he's also asking about content, but we went over that. From Ben, what distributors and platforms are looking for Black sci-fi / etc.? We have a project that has been advised to self-distribute because there hasn't been a distributor or sales agent who knew what to do with the project. He's also saying, also is the discussion that Black films don't travel that I'm interested in hearing more about.
So the thing is that if you call a platform, they're not necessarily going to say, I'm looking for a specific type of genre film. Like, you're not going to call Netflix and say, hey, we're only looking for Black sci-fi or Black romantic comedy or Amazon. They're looking for good films. See, I think the underlying theme is you have to make a good film and have a great project. And platforms are looking for great projects that are going to attract an audience. It's not necessarily specific to sci-fi or specific genre, but they're looking good films. A great Black sci-fi project would get a lot of demand. There'd be a lot of buyers for it if something, if you're creating a Black sci-fi project.
I'm sorry if I'm saying in premiere, it's EP.
It's a discussion that Black films don't travel that I'm interested in. I mean, the thing is, that's always been a self-fulfilling prophecy that the studios have perpetuated through the years. But I mean, there's plenty of examples and cases of Black films doing well overseas. But you have to understand is that when we think about the overseas markets and you think about the studios, so the studios have buyers, they have international buyers, and it's always been this. We've always went up against this. Black films don't travel, but like I said, there's a whole list of Black films that have done well, but they always attributed to it, oh, that was an anomaly or that wasn't the norm. But that's one of the things that, for me, that's one of the things I've been battling or fighting against, is the whole misconception about Black films don't travel overseas. And really where I think that business is going to really get blown open is that if you looked over the last 15 years, the Hollywood industry and the studios have been focused on China. So they've been really, really focused on penetrating China because China is such a big market. But really where we're going to see the growth there is going to be in Africa. And as Africa, everybody's investing in Africa, the connectivity. So as Facebook, Elon Musk, everybody's investing in Africa into up-leveling the internet connectivity over there. As the continent technology gets better, that's going to be the market especially for Black film, because there's just a huge audience base. They have a huge appetite for American type films, but that's, it's a few years away, but that's really, we're going to see huge growth there from an international standpoint.
Since short form content is the future and it's finally starting to be embraced due to platforms like TikTok and not necessarily Quibi, because it wasn't scaled right, do you think it's a great strategic idea to create an entire series of original content of 3 to 8 minutes?
I would disagree. When you say since short form content of the future, I wouldn't say that the future. I mean, short form content has been around. You gotta think, the biggest network in the world is YouTube. YouTube is built on short form user generated content. So I wouldn't say that. And when you reference TikTok, TikTok's not short form film. That's just user generated content. It's social content. It's not narrative films per se. So social media has always been about short form content because the majority of users access social media on their mobile phones. So short form has always been around. It's not necessarily the future. I mean, you could do a series of like shorts, but like I said, that's not the future. That's been done. It's been here. It's not going anywhere. But it's really, the audiences are on the social media platforms because they're accessing through their mobile devices.
Yeah, from Rico, what markets would you suggest going to? For example, American film market.
Depending on the type of film you have. I mean, yeah, American film markets are markets you can go sell. I mean, that's a big one. I mean, I would definitely recommend that. There's a lot of buyers there.
We have from Kansas, she's actually suggesting for faith-based films, she's saying contact Tony Judix.
Yeah, actually, I know Tony. That's
Okay.
right.
SBPOP Family Network, Crown Media.
Yeah.
They do blackface bills. Yeah. She
Yes,
just
that's definitely she's definitely a good person. Gets it, but she's definitely in the market for faith-based films.
Do you know their website? There's a next person asking for the website. I gather they can look it up. I guess for Tony's.
I mean, I would just Google it.
Yeah. Okay. From Brown, is it important to initially have name actors if everything is web-based?
Like I said, I don't use the word web-based, but if you're doing a digital, if you want to call it web, but if you're doing a digital, no, you don't necessarily have to have name actors.
Okay. Do I need an agent or entertainment lawyer to even have a conversation with a distributor?
So let's define for this conversation distributor. I'm going to define a distributor as, let's say, a studio. So it's whether it's Lionsgate, Paramount, those are distributors. And there's a few indies out there. If you're trying to get to a studio, you're more likely going to need an agent because they're not just going to pick up your call. So if you're trying to get to one of the major Warner Brothers or Paramount or Lionsgate, Disney, you're going to need an agent to even get in the door.
Okay. From Brown, because Africa is shelling out just as much content as India. I'm not sure if there's a question there. Because Africa is shelling out just as much content as India. So we have what's Jeff's company website? Can you give that website? Because people were asking for contact. I know we went over that before, but you
could just go to laughoutloud.com and there's an email on there.
Okay. Somebody else is giving Tony's Crown Media website address where she's at.
Crownmedia.com.
Yep. Also go to Stage 32 and pitch there. They have faith-based executives. Somebody's saying, or IMDb Pro for that. Okay. Kimberly, Jonathan, I know Combs. What are your thoughts on password protecting online films?
We said Jonathan, is she directing it to somebody else?
I don't know if she's directing it to Jonathan, John Lipp, our organizer of Big Apple. So he's not on right now, but she's asking, what are your thoughts on password protecting online films?
There's plenty of services to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's online, it's online. It can get ripped. I mean, you can password. Yeah. Once you put it up there, it's up. Somebody has a website. My other website is codeblack.com.
Okay. All right. Let's see what we got here. Yes, okay, thanks. What is your email address? Everybody keeps asking that. Let me ask you, what is the best tools for currently to connect with African American audiences?
What's the best what?
The best tools?
I mean, you have to go to where they're at. If you're trying to market and connect, it's going to be social media. African American audience are over-indexing on social media, but also they're over-indexing on AVOD streaming platforms. Basically, AVOD are the free streaming platforms, but like platforms like Tubi, Pluto, Roku, African American audiences are over-indexing compared with general market audiences.
Okay. Do you think a pitch fest or pitching to producers is worth the effort and money?
If there's producers sitting on the panel who are buyers or can get your film made, depends who the producers are.
Okay. Also from Gloria, who asked about Pitch Fest, she said, thank you for giving a shout out to the Negro League with your shirt. I have an award-winning action/drama script with a Black female protagonist, which is the best to connect to my project, a list female actress, director, or producer.
Female, actress and director are what gets it moving.
From Candace, what are your thoughts on getting a publicist?
Depends what you're trying to publicize. Is it publicize it for you as a filmmaker, or is it for a film? It really depends what your objective is. Like, for example, if you were doing the film, so for example, if you had a film and you had admitted in the Sundance Film Festival, you absolutely need a publicist to really work it and bring awareness on it. It really depends what you're trying to do.
Yeah, she just clarified that, saying for a film. So basically what she just covered. She's saying it's for a film. So from Jason, if you have an urban horror film, is it better to market to distributors as an African-American film or as a horror film?
I would just call it horror, because horror is such a genre that it crosses over ethnicities, and there's nothing special about saying it's an African-American horror film, because there's so much horror out there. Now, if you had an African-American sci-fi film, I might say you position that way, but for horror, because there's so much horror, I would just market it as a horror film.
Okay, Ricardo, I think it is. How do you pick up content? The most often? Online submissions, seeing on YouTube / Facebook, festivals, etc. ?
Festivals and festivals would probably be the one, and then online submissions. I've never picked up anything off YouTube or Facebook.
From Amina, I think it is. I have created feature-length films with no financial support out of my own pocket. Does that give me an advantage when looking for distribution for my future film projects?
Okay, if you say I've created a feature film with no financial support out of my own pocket, I mean, are you saying you got an investor?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand it, but no, it doesn't give you any kind of advantage other than you own the film.
Right. What are the best film festivals for African-American films? Are there ones more than others, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, for African-American films, I always see American Black Film Festival, ABFF, which is in Miami, and Urban World, and then International Film Festival, which is in International Black Film Festival in Nashville. Those are the three big ones. And Pan-African too, forgot about that.
Yep, that's what she's mentioning. Yeah.
Those are the ones you want to get to.
Yeah. How can filmmakers begin building an audience and connecting with African-American film audiences prior to officially releasing the film?
I'm going to always say that the holy grail is social media. You have to be on social media, and you have to build a community around your film through social media. That is the great, social media is the great connector to connecting to an audience.
Right. I think we mentioned this before, but what do distributors specializing in African-American films look for when determining if they would like to acquire a film?
Well, to be honest with you, there's not really any distributors out there that's focused on African-American films from a distribution standpoint. But, a distributor is looking for a film that they feel they can market and find an audience. And it can, obviously, and generate revenue. But it's really about if they feel they can market the film, if they feel they can get an audience for it, and make money with it.
Right. Okay. Can you, one last thing, to get a hold of you, I know we mentioned this before, but people continue to ask if there's an email or whatnot. They can go to your website and email you from that way?
Yeah, let me kind of give you back on what I actually do right now. Okay, so I have two companies. I have, Laugh Out Loud, which is Kevin Hart's streaming network that I run, and I'm Kevin Hart's partner. So in addition to doing that, I work on his tours and things like that. Then I have Codeblack Films, which which has been around for about 10 years, where I market and distribute films. So there's two things going on. What I'm focused on right now, me personally, is building out networks. I'm working on distribution deal in Africa, but I'm working on the business of it. Now I have people that work for me that, I have development people and acquisitions people who really are looking at content. I'm not as much involved in the content of it these days, just because I'm building out the business. I I'm building out a Black streaming network. So I'm focused on building out the business of it versus I'm not on a day-to-day per se at looking at content films, but I do have a team that that's always evaluating and looking for films. But what I'm trying to do is build the network so that like everybody on this thread saying, hey, where do I go with my films? I want to be that place that you can bring the films to. So that's what I'm doing, is building out streaming platforms, like multiple streaming platforms for different genres.
I think that answers my question. Is one of the final things we ask is, what are you currently working on? So that's basically, you answer that as building the network.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
somebody said you develop scripts.
yeah.
The company is developing scripts, but I'm not the personal person. Like if you email me a script, I'm not the guy looking scripts, because I have a whole, there's 40 people that work in the company. So there's development people, you know, because it's part of Laugh Out Loud is also, you know, we're the sister company for Heartbeat Productions, which is Kevin Hart's production company, which, as you know, had, you know, developed Fatherhood. We have True Story coming up with Kevin and Wesley Snipes, and we have a bunch of films in development as well as TV projects. So we have a very, very active development pipeline. But like I said, I'm working on building out the distribution platforms and other more business, the business of it all, and how to monetize our company and things like that.
Well, people are asking for, you know, who within your company do the email specs? Do you have a staff contact at your company who reads content?
Yeah, I mean, you can email Amanda at laughoutloud.com and she can direct it to the right people.
Okay. Amanda at Laugh Out Loud. Okay.
Yeah, she'll direct it to somebody on the Codeblack or Heartbeat, but she can traffic and direct it to the right people.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate your time and everything that you've come and done for us today. We appreciate it very much.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, yeah, I just want to say thank you very much, you know, for being a part of this today. We really, really appreciate it. And just to confirm, Amanda, Laugh Out Loud, was it Laugh Out Loud or LOL on the
laughoutloud.com.
Laugh Out Loud, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just gonna write that in here. Okay, and our participants can just write like in the subject line, you know, Big Apple Film Festival conference or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, and I think I just had a question for you myself, actually. Just generally speaking, whether it's Black audiences or just audiences in general, how do you recommend filmmakers go about building their audiences prior to even approaching a distributor? I know you had mentioned social media. Would you say that's probably the best way to go nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no other way to go, because you want to build a community around your property. I mean, you can do that in the filmmaking process, development process, depending on what the idea is, but there's no other way to reach people at scale outside of social media. And it's
Right.
but it's also about really building a community. Like, you know, as me, when I built, like the way we use our marketing, but our marketing. So for like on my Codeblack side, like I have multiple Codeblack pages that have millions and millions of followers on them. So I can just hit a button and I have a Codeblack faith page. I have a Codeblack. If you go to Facebook, you'll see a Codeblack movie page. You'll see a Codeblack life page, which is general. You'll see a Codeblack faith page. You'll see Codeblack's Blueprint, which is my hip hop page. You'll see a Codeblack woman page, and these pages have over 1 million followers on each of them. So I built communities around the niche genre of content. So my faith-based page is faith, my hip hop page, you know, things like this. So I built these online communities, and that was the first thing I did, because I'm a marketer, you know, I'm really come from marketing. So I built my community. So when I have these films to market, I have automatic audience. So it's really building these communities and audiences.
And do you see filmmakers monetizing from YouTube, from your experience? And if so, how are they doing it?
YouTube is difficult.
Yeah,
there are influencers and talent that are monetizing and making a lot of money. The challenge is that to make money on YouTube, you have to have a lot of content. Like you just have one film and put it up there, you're not going to get the numbers you need to really make money. So those people that are making, when you read about, hey, someone made $1 million YouTube, they're posting content every day. Like they're, and it's almost like their full-time job. Like they're just throwing up content, and it built these communities. But if you just have one film, you're not going to monetize on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
It's just an entirely different animal.
Right. Understandable. All right. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much. Again, this is Jeff Clanagan. He is the CEO of LOL Entertainment, partnering with Kevin Hart. It's Kevin Hart's production company. And he's also the CEO and founder of Codeblack Films. So yeah, Jeff, thanks a lot. And we will hopefully see you soon.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye now. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.